Hey guys, I'm Lane Norton, and I'm here with
Holly Baxter!
Ooh. And this is her reverse dieting series. So, you've had a fun week.
I always have a fun week, Lane.
She was a little cranky yesterday. Do you want to tell the viewers at home why you were cranky?
Well, okay, I'm going to set the scene. I'll set the scene here. So, for about 2 years, I never had a period because I was always dieting, showtime, and just if I was going to get it, I would skip it purposefully. So, I allowed myself to kind of get back to a healthy body weight, and I was like, I want to get my period again. And it took about a year, and a lot of women actually will talk about this, you know, they will say, oh, I haven't had my period for a few months. This is fairly common. So for me, when I finally got it back, I noticed that the symptoms were way worse than what they were when I was a lot younger. And I think Lane is finding this super amusing because
I feel like this is just this is just what pretty much every woman who has a period goes through.
I know, I've never
experienced. And you're like, oh, how do people do this?
So yesterday I started to get monthly symptoms, and it was just atrocious. And I think it kind of rolls in nicely to this week's macros and kind of what we're going to do with my reverse diet and things like that. So,
but let's talk about your mindset too, because yesterday I believe you referred to yourself as a hippopotamus. Yes, really? You definitely referred to yourself as a hippopotamus.
No, I've never done that.
You did.
So, I think something that I really want to emphasize and remind all the females who are watching this video series is that around that time of the month, your hormones are changing significantly, and with that, your perception tends to get a little bit skewed. And I was subject to this yesterday, and whilst I know what happens, and I was saying this out loud to you,
I feel like something happened with your brain chemistry.
Yeah, we were walking to the hairdresser yesterday afternoon. I was going to book an appointment, and I was really grumpy. And then we walked next door. I was like, I need an ice cream. So we went to go get an ice cream, and the ice cream place was closed. And I'm like, I am so angry today. I just don't get it.
You could actually see a rain cloud that was just following above her head.
Yeah.
I
just said, wouldn't be surprised if I get struck by lightning in the area of my back.
Oh, their back was sore too.
So I was like, yeah, that'll happen. But anyways, my point is, our perception tends to get a little bit skewed. So leading into the week where I would normally get my period, my mindset about how I look, how I feel is so exaggerated. So I want you to remember that women, when you're about to get your period, remind yourself that the way that you feel is not a reasonable or a normal response. So yes, yesterday especially.
In other words, you be cray.
Yeah, you really are. Your perception is totally off. So I felt like I was about 75 kilos yesterday. I was really bloated. In fact, I have some facts for you. Just to give you an idea, on my regular waist circumference at the moment has been sitting around 70 to 71 centimeters. It hasn't really changed throughout this reverse diet at all. But I took my waist circumference last night just before bed because I was disgusted at the hippopotamus that was hanging, or the growth out of my stomach. And I was 78 centimeters, so that is a significant amount of bloating. And I said to Lane, I'm like, look at my little baby, it's disgusting. So I just wanted to say that is normal. It's okay. It happens to everybody. So just keep that in mind when you're having a fit about what you look like.
Yeah, and keep in mind that try not to judge the process too much, because I've had women just frankly give up on a reverse diet because they got a little bit bloated because, there is, I think some, especially women, have comfort in caloric restriction. Mm-hmm. So even if they're not making much progress, they go, okay, well, I am dieting. Whereas they feel guilty by overeating. They feel guilty by purposefully overfeeding, even if the point of the overfeeding is to get them healthier, increase their metabolic rate, and put them in a better position to diet. They don't have the same comfort. And I think when it gets to that period where, they may be already kind of borderline uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Which is exactly how I was yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say it because you just get annoyed by it, but, you look great. You have a physique that a lot of women would really like to have. but you're rolling your eyes. Comment below if you would like to look like Holly and you're a female.
Don't.
So, but even then, like, you go up a kilo and it's like all the alarms start going off, the warning sirens start going off,
it's like
the walls are starting to crumble a little bit.
There's a really fine line for me when I feel great and when I feel absolutely terrible, and it's like a 1 kilo range, and that is right where most women tend to buffer around that time of the month. So yesterday was probably the first day I was ready to say, crap, I think that I want to stop this and diet. Like, I was that close yesterday from pulling the plug, especially since next week we're actually traveling to Australia. We've got seminars, we're going to be around a lot of people, and there's always that underlying pressure, I think, from a woman's perspective of you need to be in shape. So that was my immediate thought process. I was like, well, I'm over that kind of 67 kilo mark that I really don't like, and I certainly don't feel comfortable at. But I've got to remind myself that there is a reason why I'm doing this. And I said to Lane, we were lying in bed last night, and I said, do you think that it's realistic for me to get back down to around that 65, really happy space for me, probably sitting around 11, 12% body fat, just comfortably, but on, 2100, maybe 2000 calories. Is that a realistic expectation? We kind of, what did you say to me?
Well, I said yes, but probably not this year.
Probably not this year.
Yeah.
So for many people, I think, if you can't achieve something like right now, let's do it, let's go, 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 you can kind of tend to put it off. So I think that is a mistake that a lot of women make. If you can't achieve something right now, then don't worry about it, I'm just going to diet.
Yeah,
And that's the thing that we always revert back to. Well, it's not now, I can't see it in the near future, so I'm just going to scrap that altogether.
If you keep doing the same thing you've always done, you will get the same shit you've always gotten. And I had a client yesterday who actually, she's been trying to diet. She's on 1,300 calories. I actually estimated her basal metabolic rate based on how much weight she has, or how much she gained and then hasn't lost. Mm-hmm. And her basal metabolic rate was around 1,000 calories a day, under 1,000 calories a day. Wow. And I was like, you gotta make a change. Like, you gotta change something because this is obviously not working. And I had to tell her, like, listen, this may take years. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe not reverse dieting straight through, but a large portion of it may take years. And she got upset. I said, listen, you think about how long you've been telling your body that you've been starving. Mm. That's how long these adaptations have been given that signal, and it may take a similar amount of time to get out of that. Mm-hmm. But it's not something people want to hear. Yeah,
I think the other thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to reverse diet, in a linear fashion. Yeah. You can reverse diet for a few weeks. If you get to that kind of uncomfortable weight, and you can do the same thing in a muscle gain. Now, we were chatting about a client we were working with yesterday. If you get to a point where you are feeling a little bit uncomfortable, you don't have to keep going up. Yeah. You could either pause and just hold at maintenance and just see how your body responds to those new calories. Or you could potentially do a little mini cut, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. It depends.
I've seen a lot of people screw reverse diets up doing too many mini cuts. Yeah.
I think there's probably a bit of a threshold as to where someone's calories are per kilo of lean body mass. Now, what I do for my clients, I would say that if you're over 45 calories per kilo of lean body mass, then that would be okay to do a mini cut. If you're still struggling to hit a normal amount, maybe around that 30 to 35, I think that would be an unreasonable, idea to do a mini cut, because your metabolism isn't really that great at that point. So I would continue to work until you can get to that. Then, if you're really uncomfortable at your weight, that would be probably an okay time to maybe do 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. That'd be it, and then get back on that reverse dieting, train.
But I hesitate to recommend that to people who don't have a coach, because they tend to abuse that idea.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, let's go take a look at your results this week and what we're going to do.
Okay. So, looking at my average intakes this week, I was pretty on point. I thought I went over a lot, but looking at this, I tend to have the problem where I'll remember what my macro targets were, but I'll forget what my calorie target was. So I'm looking at my macros, and obviously they don't always align when you're...
Well, because your app doesn't include alcohol. It includes alcohol. It's alcohol.
This now includes alcohol. Did you notice I've added in a nice alcohol table?
Nice.
That seems to feature quite frequently in my diet lately. So
39 grams.
I think it's really important. I don't know why all apps don't have this. It would make life a whole lot easier, but Anyways, I actually came in at 98% compliance this week, which surprised me.
Good.
I thought I was terrible. Compliance to protein, I'm over. Seems to be a bit of a running theme. Can you see my protein targets here?
No, 165 protein target.
And I was
174.
I did a 196 one day and a 191, so I've got 2 really high protein days.
Better than one day you had 243 grams.
Yeah.
This is the same girl who's like, oh, hon, I think I'd like to drop back to bikini and lose some muscle.
So
be right back eating 200 grams of protein a day.
Yeah,
to lose
this
muscle.
week we also had the conversation of what division would I like to compete in at the end of the year, because personally, like, I've obviously always done figure and fitness. I don't actually like that physique. Not like, if you look at the top pros, to be a pro figure competitor, like, they're jacked. Like, it's very impressive, and I know the amount of work that goes into looking like that, but it's kind of impractical. I think you just don't really find any clothing. You got to wear a sports gear every single day of your life. So I actually would rather be a bikini model if I could, but like this juicy.
Juicy.
So I actually humored later. I was like, what do you reckon it will take for me to get back, lose a few pounds of muscle? And he was like, yeah, not going to happen this year.
Well, I think it points to, like, what are your habits? I mean, even now, like, what you're finding is you're having a lot of food left over at the end of the day, like tons of food, because you're so used to fasting early in the day and then eating lightly.
Or just picking really low calorie options.
Yeah, picking really low calorie options because you're used to not having that much food to draw from. So now, because that's your habit, and this is why I tell people it's much more important to focus on habits versus motivation or inspiration or whatever, because all that stuff is fleeting. Whereas your habits stay with you.
Yeah. You can
so this is your habit. Your habit is to select for low calorie foods, which is great. But now you've had to start, like last night you had to have a big bowl of cereal just to meet your macros.
Yeah, it was terrible. I had to eat a whole bowl of Reese's peanut butter puffs. Oh, it was disgusting. Said no one ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I keep going over my protein intakes. It's pretty clear I'm not going to be a bikini model overnight. I would probably have to drop back to under 100 grams of protein, like literally below the required amounts if I wanted to lose the muscle that I have in my upper body. I think my lower body is fine, but yeah, not reasonable, and I don't think that I could diet that much. But I would not dislike training for bikini. I think knowing what I would have to do to get to that kind of physique, I would just stop weight training and stop testing my muscle and not do any strength work. But I could still do a lot of exercise. I could just run around and be an energized bunny and join F45.
Well, I mean, I think
that's my old habit.
I like
it.
Well, and protein is you probably really like protein because it's a lot of satiety. You know, there's a lot of satiety associated with protein. It's much better satiety than carbohydrate or fat.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, there's research from Bill Campbell that shows that if you're going to overeat anything, you're probably better off overeating protein. So, it's not the worst thing in the world, but obviously, like, you're taking calories away that could be going towards carbohydrates and fats. Not a huge deal, but as you said, your overall compliance to your calories was very good, and your compliance to your macros still wasn't bad. Your compliance you were still within 10% of all the different macros. So I think this is good. Now, you want to talk about what happened with your weight?
Yeah, so as we mentioned before, usually the week that I see my weight fluctuate the most is the week before I actually get my period. So last week my average weight was 66.7. Now this week I've jumped up to 67.2, so 500 grams. I mean, let's actually work out. So I have a bit of it's an in-house, what do we call this, our calculation?
Proprietary.
A proprietary little secret, I guess. Let's just work this out for a quick sec. So if my weight was 66.7 for a conservative reverse diet, I'm looking to be gaining at most 130 grams per week. So I was exceeding that by 5.
Yeah, but again, that could be water retention.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost undoubtedly water retention. And if you look at, you know, your previous week's reverse, you had one week where you were 67.2, another week where you were 67.1. And what we did those weeks was we held you steady.
Yeah.
So we did we added like 2 grams.
We
of
added
fat
2
here.
grams. Or
Yeah.
something.
So and the same thing with fat. Or no, yeah. So you added some fat.
Yeah.
I think this week, because it's the biggest jump you've had. You've had a 400-gram jump previously. You've had a 300-gram jump previously. Those are pretty normal. This one's a little bit more outside of that. It's a 500-gram jump.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would be, let's hold steady for a week. You're already feeling kind of uncomfortable. Let's let things
the hippo.
let's let things marinate a little bit. But even with how bloated you were feeling last night, you were like, oh, I just know I'm going to be 70 kilos tomorrow. And
I probably was 70 kilos at some point during the day yesterday.
So anyway, you were 67.2 as an average, which is why one of the reasons we use averages, and I think it's very important to use averages, is because it washes out your fluctuations.
Yeah.
So for example, last week when you weighed in, do you remember what you weighed in on weigh-in day? It was lower than your average, I think.
Yeah, it was actually.
It's like 66.5.
Yes, ridiculous.
Right. Today you weighed in at what?
It was 67.7.
So if you just took those two, you would say, oh my God, I gained 1.1 kilos, right? But when you take averages, you see it washes out a lot of those big fluctuations. And now you can see that, well, you only really gained 500 grams.
Yeah, actually, I had there was a lady that was chatting with me, was looking at starting coaching, and something that she asked in the very first conversation was, my weight fluctuates by at least 5 pounds, from week to week. And I just said, I find that hard to believe. I mean, yes, for a period, perhaps the weeks when you're having your menstruals, but we discussed that. It was, well, maybe you need to actually weigh yourself every day so that you can take that average, and then over the course of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you can just see the trends rather than those data points in isolation where you're probably going to get some outliers,
Yeah.
And
if I recall correctly, Katie Rutherford was like that when I worked with her. We had to do daily weights almost exclusively because she could literally fluctuate 5 pounds in a day.
Yeah, and if somebody, especially people that are new to flexible dieting, if you haven't really established any kind of routine with the way that you eat, some days you might eat a bulk of your food and the volume of your food in the morning, and then other days you might find that the bulk of your food is being consumed at the end of the day if you're not really sure how to track and plan. So the next day when you weigh in, if you've had most of your food and fluids at the end of the day, of course you're going to weigh a lot more in the morning. So I think that's something else to consider. People kind of forget that, hey, food has a weight. It's in your body. Like it's going to change your weight and fluid, right?
So I think for this week we've decided we're going to hold you steady, right? So we're going to say 165 grams of protein, 225 carbs, 70 fat.
Yeah.
And one thing to point out too is last week was a decent sized jump. We went 10 grams of carbs up and 5 grams of fat. That's a decent sized jump. That's like a 100-calorie jump almost.
Yeah.
So sometimes with reverse dieting, you have a fluctuation, then you allow it to settle, and it comes back down.
I think this happened a couple of weeks back. Actually, we had this one here when I went up to 67.2. That exact thing happened. I stayed steady, and then I kind of just mellowed back down, and then I dropped back down under 67.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And I imagine that is what will happen again here.
Yeah, so. I was a little nervous because I trained more this week because I'd been doing like 3 sessions a week in lead up to my powerlifting meet, and then last week I was like, sweet, but the intensiveness of those training sessions were pretty low. Like I think I had 2 sets scheduled, and then I was doing like stupid weights because I didn't want to injure myself, which I inherently still did anyway.
Yeah. So I'd like to wrap this up with one thing, just because this is why coaches still have coaches, because we still do dumb shit.
Yeah.
What were you doing the day after your meet?
Box squatting.
For like an RPE
250.
Yeah, so, and she's like, well, I feel like I really haven't done anything, because in Holly's mind, her level of work is equivalent to how much she has sweat. So, because she didn't sweat very much on meet day and only did 9 reps, she felt like she hadn't done much, which you may not have done much total work.
I know, the mechanical loading is still there. It's very taxing.
Well, it's more so that how hard you've gone on your central nervous system. So you've gone to the well for a maximum effort 9 different times. That's actually very hard on your body.
Yeah.
And she was like, but I felt fine the next day. And I'm like,
I actually felt fine.
I am sure you did. Because I have done that before and I have felt great. And you know what? And I told you this. I said, the week after Raw Nationals, the first time when I won, The next day I went in, or 2 days later I went in squatting 500 pounds for 8s, no problem.
Then a week later you said you went in.
That next Saturday, a week after the meet, I had squatted 650 at Raw Nationals. I was going to do 535 for 5, something, should have been about RPE 7.5. And
I bet you sat down.
I grinded out 5 reps on one set and then walked out of the gym. But it had taken time for that fatigue
effect,
and that accumulation to happen. And then what did you do this weekend when you went in with Erin?
Oh yeah, so I went in with Erin, my training buddy, and she is like super strong, just naturally a gem at like deadlifting. And she's like, oh, I'm just doing sets of 12. And I'm like, So I haven't done 12s I don't think I've done 12s. So I was like, I'll compromise. I'll go halfway. And I actually did a lighter weight than what she was using, just for 6 reps. But I lifted conventional, and I haven't really done any conventional lifting. And boy, did I wear that on Sunday. Like, even though it wasn't super heavy compared to what I've been lifting, that adjustment from doing like all low reps, higher load, but it's such a different stress on the body.
Yeah.
So yeah, Sunday I woke up, my back felt like it did probably 5 years ago when I used to squat, and I'd be like, I'm not squatting. I don't squat and I don't deadlift. It felt like that. But it's just, I should have taken things a little bit, easier, I think.
I believe there's some magic words you're searching for here.
I know, you were wrong.
Oh my God! You got it on video. All right, video out, we're done. We'll catch you guys next week.
So yeah, that's the end of that story. Don't push yourself into training too.
Sometimes discretion is the better part of valor.
Yeah.
So. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with your reverse diet this week, with your weight. We're moving house, so we've got a lot of stress going on.
I'm flying we've got to pack this house because we've got to get ready for Australia as well. So like we've got this ISSN seminar all day Friday, all day Saturday. This week is nuts. I don't think we're gonna survive.
And we've got the kids.
And we've got the kids all weekend for 5 days whilst we do that.
But we'll just woosah it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, and
you won't hear from me next week. I'll be like, I'm in a coma, staring at the ceiling.
So we'll catch you guys next week, hopefully.
See ya.